Let's talk now about RtBaseline Services. RtBaseline Services is it's an access layer that's configured and stored on the server side. So although you'll be using tools that are within a web browser, all the configuration information that you're configuring is going to be on the server. Okay, so what does it configure? Well, it allows administrators to set up specifically the Pi server connections that are going to be needed by RtWebParts. Remember, all of these things are in service of RtWebParts. So the Pi server connections, they need to be defined somewhere for RtWebParts to know what Pi servers are out there. We do that through RtBaseline. Okay. Physically, we actually do it through a web page that connects to the server. But remember, it's all done and stored on the server. Now, this is also RtBaseline Services also stores the configuration and manages the links to relational database queries. So defining certain data sources, defining data sets to query those data sources, that's all done in RtBaseline Services. Defining web service data sources, and also defining the templates that that we've mentioned just briefly with some of our web parts. You know, the idea of having a template for how your RT values show up. That's something that should be stored centrally on a server so that one person can define it and many people can use it. So again, this is all stuff that's going to be stored centrally on a server. So if we look at the architectural diagram, there's two main components that you'll see here. Of course, there's Internet Explorer, and that's where the Internet Explorer is what hosts the RtWebParts themselves. It's a web browser, of course. And then there's Internet Information Server, that's IIS. That's basically Microsoft's web server software, and that hosts RtBaseline Services. Now remember, I said that the RtBaseline Services is actually located on a server, even though you're going to be using a web browser to manipulate it. So when you open up the RtBaseline Services admin page, it'll be on a web browser, but you're in fact making changes that are going to be stored over here on this server. So let's take a look at the connectivity that is involved here. The connectivity between this server and these machines over here, these clients, is straight HTML. So no ports have to be opened other than port 80. It's basically a web application. Okay. Now we have connectivity to other applications. SQL is what hosts SharePoint, so that's actually something that has to be in this environment. And the module database provides our Pi module database provides context to help us resolve certain things. So these are two extra components that need to be in place. And the connectivity there is the traditional connectivity for those two components. Okay. But then, in addition, RtBaseline Services, by its very nature, it facilitates the communication. Well, two things. It facilitates a place to store the definitions of the Pi servers that the users have access to. So the Pi servers, their definitions are stored on RtBaseline Services, or on this server, I should say. The RtBaseline Services helps manage that. Any definitions of relational databases that we're able to connect to, their RtBaseline Services is managing that. And any definitions of web services that we can connect to, well, RtBaseline Services is managing that as well. So again, it's through client-based tools that you would set up these, and I'll demonstrate how to set these configurations up. So RtBaseline Services is managing that. Now, the mechanism at work between this RtWebPart here, or the RtWebParts on the client side, and here is that's straight Windows SharePoint. That's straight the ASP.NET technology. So, we are making use of SharePoint in what we're doing. How we're communicating between the client and the server. Now, and of course, the web parts themselves, through SharePoint technology, have their own connectivity within each other. So we'll see the configuration in a little bit, but let me summarize by saying, what you're working with when you're working with RtBaseline Services is you're going to be in a web browser making configuration or configuring the activity of something called RtBaseline Services, which manages connections to Pi, manages the connectivity or facilitates the connectivity between these SharePoint components and the Pi database and the relational databases and the web services that you've configured your users to be able to see. Here's one more approach for looking at what RtBaseline actually does. Imagine you've got all these data sources out here. Well, we do. There are lots of different data sources: historians, control systems, relational databases, specific applications like Maximo, SAP, etc. You've got all these applications that are generating data. And we need some way of bringing this data in. I mean, it's all different types of data: real-time data, relational database, enterprise resource planning data, etc. So we bring that in by means of various tools that are well known and long-lived and well beaten upon. So our interfaces will go out and get data from control systems, bring them in to a Pi server, and we have all types of different mechanisms for bringing in all this different data that we've used for quite a long time. Now, all of that data needs to be put into context. There's certain things that we need to apply to them, like when you're looking at batch type information, we need to overlay repeated events on top of the incoming data. When you're looking at data from different sources, sometimes you'd just like to be able to see that in a tree structure using our module database or our newer asset database, AF. And so we have mechanisms to align these things by certain asset databases. And that's what we call context. And all of those things together, how do we serve those up to the users who are out on the web? Well, we serve all that information up through RtBaseline Services. So it's the application, as I said, that is managing all the different connections that are defined to all these different sources, and it's the application that's going to facilitate communication through the SharePoint technology with the clients that are out in the field. Okay, that all sounds well and good, but what's the point of it all? Well, by having all of these different varied data sources aggregated underneath a single point of entry, RtBaseline Services, it really makes it much easier for people that are out there trying to get this information. They don't have to have 9 different web-based mechanisms for getting this. We've already got the mechanisms in place for retrieving these into Pi, and through RtBaseline Services they can now, through a single view, they can go out to anybody on the web.